and FBI Supervisory Special Agent Robert Dane, D.C. Metropolitan Police Chief Pamela Smith, Baltimore Police Department Commissioner Richard Worley, Baltimore City Police Department Lieutenant Colonel Steve Holman, Baltimore Police Department Lieutenant Tara McInerney, and Baltimore City Police Department Jill Beauregard. Detective G.S. Gary of the Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. And also from my office, we have Deputy State's Attorney Tom Donnelly, Homicide Division Chief Michael Dunty, Senior Homicide ASA Kurt Borkland. We also have Jen Brady, also from the Narcotics Division as well, Division Chief. We are here today to announce charges against Mr. Deon Thompson for the murder of D.C. Metropolitan Police Sergeant Tony Mason, Jr., which will be the first case handled by our office's newly created cold case unit. Thompson has been charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and related charges for allegedly shooting Sergeant Mason while he was off duty on November of 2017 at 2800 block of Elgin Avenue here in Baltimore City. This is not a finding of guilt. An individual is charged, is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty at trial. This case against Mr. Thompson will be led by my unit's new director, Senior Assistant State's Attorney Kurt Borkland. So, as a prosecutor with almost 20 years of service and experience, including both extensive homicide prosecution and management experience, last year ASA Borkland successfully prosecuted the state of Maryland versus Michael Robertson. It was a cold case. It was the no-body homicide where the defendant received 2 consecutive life sentences for the May 2017 murder of Anika Eggleston and her unborn child. The Robertson case served as proof of a concept supporting the theory that cold case homicides should be specifically assigned to those prosecutors with the necessary experience, skill set, and availability of resources. Cold cases are generally defined as those unsolved criminal investigations that remain open pending the discovery of new evidence. These cases were not solved initially through traditional means. Often fresh eyes are what is needed to review existing work and pursue different avenues. The goal of the cold case investigator is not to always solve the case, but to push the case forward for the investigation in a meaningful way. Often these incremental steps lead to larger advancements. Progress is on a case-by-case basis, and the case is believed to be forgotten by many people. However, no matter how slight or how often, provides solace to aggrieved families. Despite the case just lying dormant, these cases are important and deserve attention. As such, our cold case unit will work collaboratively with the existing Baltimore City Police Department cold case unit to ensure that these unique cases are investigated and better coordination between the two agencies and the specialization to make sure we can get the job done. Currently, cold case homicides are assigned along with fresh investigations among my office's homicide unit. The attorneys are tasked with prosecuting homicides in Baltimore City, and we feel are absolutely some of the best prosecutors in the country. But due to enormous caseloads, their availability is limited to take a cold case homicide, which tends to require more attention and focus to the little details. My plan for this unit is to gradually expand, contingent upon obtaining available federal funding, primarily allocated for the DNA testing and forensic genetic genealogy investigation. We will also be able to expand this unit's capacity when the city unfreezes several pens allocated to our agency. This will allow us to continue building a capacity to keep up with the work and the resources that these types of investigations require. The charge against Mr. Thompson are a result of painstaking interagency investigation conducted by the Baltimore City Police Department, Homicide Division, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. This is yet another example of an older case that benefited from focused attention and resources. At this time, I'd like to turn this over to D.C. Metro Police Chief Pamela Smith.
Thank you, State's Attorney Ivan Bates. I'm Pamela Smith, the Chief of Police for the Metropolitan Police Department in Washington, D.C. Thank you all for being here today. Today, we gather with mixed emotions that have long been intertwined with the memory of Sergeant Tony Mason, Jr. On November 4, 2017, we lost a member of the MPD family to senseless gun violence. Sergeant Mason's dedication to service, his commitment to the safety of our communities, and the void left by his absence has been keenly felt over the years. For far too long, the details surrounding Sergeant Mason's tragic death have remained a painful mystery. But the Baltimore Police Department, the FBI, the ATF, and the Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office never stopped following up on tips and tracking down leads. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to these agencies for their tireless pursuits of this justice of this case. This arrest is a testament to the dedication of our law enforcement community and the collaborative efforts between agencies. While we cannot ease the pain of the loss of the memories of that day, we can take solace in the fact that the person responsible is being brought to justice. I also want to take a moment to thank the community. It was because of a brave person who called in a tip that we can all stand here before you today. To the family and friends of Sergeant Mason and our whole MPD family, I hope this development brings some measure of closure to a life that was lost too soon. We will continue to honor the memory of Sergeant Tony Mason Jr., and we will ensure that his legacy lives on in the safety and security of all of our cities. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to Baltimore City Commissioner Richard Worley. Excuse me.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chief Smith, and thank you, State's Attorney Bates. I'm pleased to be standing here today to talk about the hard work put in by everyone on this case in order to close the homicide case of Sergeant Tony Mason Jr. The BPD's cold case squad has worked tirelessly to track down the suspect and worked with the State's Attorney's Office to file charges against the individual. I want to recognize the continued hard work of Detective Jill Beauregard and Lieutenant Terry McClarney for all the hard work and unwavering commitment to the cold case squad. Cold cases are extremely tiring and frustrating, but these two never gave up when their relentless search for the suspect, sticking with it for 2 years. Let me get the message to those committing crimes and thinking you've gotten away with it. Gotten away with something. You won't. You will get caught. You will be held to account. I hope that the charges against Deon Thompson can finally bring some peace and closure to Sergeant Mason's family, loved ones, and the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. I'm thankful to the State's Attorney's Cold Case Unit, the FBI, ATF, and the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. As we develop this partnership, we can continue to work toward the shared goal of moving cases forward and bringing closure to victims' families. While we were able to do this case and close the case of Sergeant Mason's homicide, we also want to make sure that we are holding those accountable, every single person involved in this murder. I'm asking anyone who may have additional information with this case, and we know there are some people out there, to call the Baltimore City Homicide Unit, 410-396-2100, or Metro Crime Stoppers 1-866-7-LOCKUP. With the coordination and focused attention and additional resources that this partnership brings, I look forward to resolving many more cold cases in the near future. I will now hand it back over to State's Attorney Bates.
Thank you, Commissioner Worley. I want to thank the hardworking detectives of Baltimore City Police Department for their tireless efforts in this case, and thank you, Chief Smith, for your continued support. And thank you to all the law enforcement partners that have joined in this process and have joined us today. What you see as we continue to work collaboratively together, and I will echo the sentiments of Commissioner Worley. You may think that you've gotten away with murder, but advance the technology and us working together, we're going to make sure we try to and we focus on holding you accountable. And as hopefully we can try to bring some closure to the many families that have lost loved ones and do not know what happened to them. Now we'll take a few questions.
Tell us the circumstances surrounding his homicide and what actually led you to this suspect in specific?
I'm going to go ahead and let Herb Borkland talk about it.
Hi, good morning. We're not here today to really comment specifically on the facts of the investigation. We received information that led us to a potential suspect. We were able to corroborate that information.
Can you characterize any link between this suspected individual and the victim and the other person he was with?
No.
Do you know anything about a motive? Do you have any leads on that?
Can't comment on any particular information about a motive in this case. I do believe that the press will receive the statement of probable cause at the end of this press conference. It's out, so you have some information on the case.
Did the $60,000 reward help in this?
We can't comment on any reward money and whether or not there was, I think there was reward money that was outlaid initially in this case. We can't comment on whether or not that's going to be given to any one or multiple people.
Sir, can you confirm that Mr. Thompson is currently in federal prison in New Jersey related to a drug arrest in Baltimore County?
Yes.
Is he going to be arraigned? Is he going to come here to be arraigned at some point?
Yes, at some point soon. We've started the process to have him transported back to Baltimore City to be formally charged with this case and go through the process.
Is this a possible case of mistaken identity?
I can't comment on the case.
There was a mention of possible additional people being involved in this. What can you say? How many more do you think may be involved? Was this like drug related, or what exactly was this? Kind of unclear what this really, what happened here.
Sure. Again, I would point you to the statement of probable cause that has been released. We do believe other people were involved.
I'm sure the statement will say when the tip was called in, but do you know why this person waited so many years to call it in?
I can't comment on the timing of the tip.
Folks, it's broadly on cold cases. A lot of people might draw a distinction between a police officer and maybe the effort that was put into that, and many other people who are cold cases out there. Could you address that? Is there anything special about this case because the individual was a police officer?
Well, I'll just say that there's nothing special about this case other than it was ready for charging. The evidence was there. I know the cold case unit led by Lieutenant McClarney and Detective Beauregard, they work very hard on every cold case regarding whether it was a police officer who was murdered or a civilian.
How long has this person been on your radar, can you say? Has it been a recent development with them, or have they been someone you've been looking into?
I would say several years.
There was an internal investigation underway into the victim. Does that have anything to do with it? In any way, I know it was mentioned back in 2017. Is that related in any way?
I can't comment on that.
Can you say if he was targeted because he was a law enforcement officer?
I'm sorry, I can't comment on that.
Anything else?
So real quick, one of the things, we have certain rules and instead of Maryland case called Gansler, where we can and can't say certain things. However, if it's in the public sphere, i.e. the statement of facts, then you can go ahead and look at that. But as the individuals holding the alleged perpetrator accountable, we just can't come out and say those words. But the statement of facts in the public sphere, you can go ahead and look at that, and you can take whatever you need to from the statement of facts. So I don't want you to think that we're trying to be evasive, but there are just certain things under the law that as prosecutors we cannot say. We always want to say everybody's innocent until proven guilty, and everybody gets a right to a fair trial.
Hey, State's Attorney Bates, can I take another crack at that question from the authority of your office? I'm sure there are a lot of families in Baltimore City that go, well, what about my victim? Is mine a cold case too? Or are they paying attention like they are to a police officer's case? What would you say to families like that?
Well, I would say the state's attorney's office didn't have a dedicated prosecutor cold case prosecution. The police were doing the job all by themselves. And so they make the arrest, we do the prosecution. But now they have a partner in this process and this work to say we're going to do this together. But also the case will only be as good as the tips that they sometimes get, and then they can now look at the tips and follow up other information. Remember when I said in my comments that it's not always to solve the case, but it's to push the case a little bit further to get it to the position that we're able to solve it. Now you have an experienced attorney such as Kurt Borkland who's going to be able to sit down and be that partner to say, let's look at this, let's look at that, and hey, we can now have this case prepared to proceed.
Could anybody here characterize for us in Baltimore City how many cold cases that you would classify as a cold case are kind of out there, either as an aggregate or under investigation? Is there a way to characterize those numbers?
So we don't actually define a cold case as 3 years.
Terry.
Yeah, we got to hear you. Thank you very much.
We don't actually say, okay, after 3 years, this is now a cold case. It's more fluid. A lot of it depends on information that comes in that we didn't have in the beginning. And that this case was like that. We look for cases that are prosecutable, and this was sort of driven by that, and they all are.
So you've been in
If they weren't driven by new information, they would already be cleared.
You've been in the homicide unit many years and the cold case unit now many years. What do you think about this new partnership with the state's attorney's office?
Kurt Borkland is great. I mean, this is really good. And if I can also say, it wasn't just us, the FBI.
Yes.
did a lot here, particularly Summer Baugh. And so we have the FBI, we have Kurt. Things are getting better.
Chief Smith, can you comment on what it's like losing one of your own? It may not have been in the line of duty, but to lose an officer, even if it was 7 years ago, to go through something like this with
Well,
your
I,
force?
well, I don't think it's just limited to just Chief Smith as a police chief, but I think about Commissioner Worley here as well. I mean, anytime we lose an officer, whether it's due to senseless violence or whether it's in the line of duty, off duty, it's impactful to us because what we think about is that we think about people who we have relationships with, and members of my agency had relationships with Sergeant Mason, his family. Oftentimes we think about the family and the extended family, and it's heartbreaking. But I think what is always rewarding is knowing that in the space that we're in with law enforcement partners is that not just law enforcement cases, but any cases, that we are constantly working behind the scenes day in and day out with our homicide branch and with our detectives and investigators and federal and state partners to really bring a lot of these cases to closure. So for us, it is certainly a bittersweet day, a bittersweet moment, but we're certainly very proud of the work that we have with our partners here to really help us in these spaces.
There was a woman in the car as well. Was she helpful, just not only as a victim, but as a witness to the incident? Was she helpful in identifying the suspect?
We can't go into that. Once again, we're confined to the four corners what the statement of facts says.
Anything else? I do know that we have a lot of DC media here. You may not have gotten the release. If you did not get it, we can make sure you have it before you leave. Thank you.
All right, thank you.